Well, hello and welcome to History Delights. Kevin's behind the camera. Say hello, Kevin.
Hello. Hey, you know what?
What?
We have an audience today.
We have a live audience today. You want to take a picture of the live audience? All right.
And you didn't have to drug them or anything?
No.
Well, hey, there's a step.
You didn't know the pressure was on having
No,
a studio
I
audience.
did not. No.
Okay. Well, Kevin and I are very fortunate to be able to sit down here with O J Fargo. And OJ, why don't you tell us just a little bit about your background here with history and the Civil War and all that good stuff?
Well,
They want to know your bona fides.
my bona fides.
That's
All
right.
No, I've always been what I have fondly
Who are
referred
you?
to as
What's
a.
your name?
Oh, what's my name?
Yeah.
O J Fargo. That's my name. I've always been what I fondly call a history nut. So this happened to be the game that was going on in town, and 32 years later, I'm still sitting here.
Yeah, you bet. So you really took an interest in Iowa during the Civil War and their participation. Is that correct?
I used to teach Iowa history, and of course, as a subset of that, you also had the Civil War going. But when I was teaching Iowa history, I thought the Civil War was pretty boring. So,
Oh, okay, okay.
but if you're going to do it to death. That's my motto.
Yep, there you go. So, and you've actually written a couple of books.
I've written some books. I wrote a series of booklets. I used to deal with 22 school districts, so trying to get kids interested in history is kind of a tough nut in a lot of cases.
Mm-hmm.
So you have to kind of bring it down to their level. So. Yeah, I wrote a book on Iowa history. There was a couple of them on the Civil War, and then a whole series of booklets about Iowa itself.
Okay.
So it's kind of an intro.
Okay. Now, Kevin and I was talking with another one of our colleagues here, Gene Stevens,
Yes.
and Gene and I discussed, Iowa kind of does a bad job of promoting its history and so.
No, they don't do a bad job. They do a terrible job.
Okay. Thanks for.
Well, and they don't do any
clarification.
job at all.
Or any
so,
job at all.
Yeah.
Okay. So, with him, it's more the scoundrels and the outlaws of the Old West and this and that. But I have found since, I've taken up my interest in the Civil War, there's very little about Iowa's participation in the Civil War. However, Iowa was very, very involved, and we had some very stellar units. But, just like today, Iowa's flyover country and all these Midwest states and along the Mississippi River and the battles that took place out here kind of get overlooked because everything's, Antietam, Gettysburg, but a lot gets forgotten about here.
We had terrible publicists back then.
No publicists.
No publicists.
No publicists. But I got to thinking, and you had mentioned one time about John Brown and the abolition, and just prior to the Civil War, the nation went through what's referred to now today as Bleeding Kansas.
Mm-hmm.
And Bleeding Kansas was a result of the Kansas-Nebraska Act. So back then, and Iowa was one of the last states admitted, and we were a northern state, but under the agreement at the time, when you entered a non-slave state, you had to enter a slave state to keep the balance in the Senate.
We came in with Maine.
We came in with Maine, yeah.
Oh boy, oh boy.
And then I think there was Florida and Texas were kind of the sister states, I think.
See, hey, that's all I knew, okay?
That's all. Okay, I guess we got to end the video now. That's all you do. No. But anyway, the Kansas-Nebraska Act comes along, and they decide that we're going to let the new territories, when they apply for statehood, vote for themselves whether they wanted to be free or state. Hence, Bleeding Kansas, because as soon as Kansas applied for the statehood, and the fight was on to determine whether it was going to be free or slave. So you had the slavers moving into the state. You had abolitionists. There was a big call out east for abolitionists to move out to Kansas to try to make it a free state.
Yep.
And then there was a lot of border actions between Kansas and Missouri, which was a slave state. Behind this whole big backdrop enters John Brown. Now, can you tell us who John Brown is?
John Brown was a Calvinist minister. He was an evangelical and had kind of a checkered career. He was either quite successful out in the East. He lived in Connecticut, New York. His father was a tanner, so he took over his business. But like I said, it kind of ebbed and flowed. So he either had money or he was broke.
Okay.
But he supposedly, when he was 12 years old, he saw a black child being beaten, and that supposedly turned the tide for him. But he became pretty much a wild-eyed abolitionist and was convinced that violence was the only way that you were going to solve this problem.
So John Brown ends up making a couple of trips out to Kansas. And of course, each time I think he passed through Iowa.
Hmm.
And the first time was around 1857, somewhere in
56,
there.
yeah.
56. And he brought his sons out there with him at the
Actually, his sons were there first. He
Okay.
had gobs of sons. This boy got around.
6 or 7 sons.
Yeah. So 5 of them move out to Osawatomie, Kansas, actually. And of course, they were having trouble. So they hollered at him. Well, he jumped in a wagon and away he went. Headquartered out of Tabor, because that was not too far.
Tabor,
Plus,
Tabor, Iowa.
yes, Tabor,
Southwest Iowa.
Yep.
Okay.
And there was a Calvinist community down there. They were from Ohio, Oberlin, and we're pretty much in tune with the abolitionists. And the governor in Iowa, just to back up a bit, the governor in Iowa was anti-slavery. So as people would come across Iowa to get to Kansas, he wouldn't give them guns out of the arsenal, but he would make sure they knew where the key was at.
Okay.
So about 1,400 guns later, they all end up in Kansas. Well, I don't think John Brown ended up with any of that, but he spent a lot of time out in the East dealing with people, Frank Lloyd Garrison,
Mm-hmm.
Frederick Douglass,
Right.
and actually acquired quite a bit of money. The guns and things that he were using, the guns and the pikes and that sort of thing, were shipped into Tabor and then ended up in Davenport.
Okay.
Those are the ones they used at Harper's Ferry.
Yeah. So if we back up just a little bit, one of his sons was killed, and that's when he came out here the first time.
No,
Or was that
his 5 sons came out,
right?
and then they asked him to come out.
Right.
That's about the same time then that Lawrence got sacked.
Okay.
So this pretty much drives him over. I mean, you either really like John Brown or you don't.
Right.
Okay. I don't.
Mhm.
I thought he was certifiable, but hey.
Right. Right.
So he decides this is not a good thing. It just made him even crazier than what he was in the first place.
I guess the point I'm trying to drive at is the violence that was taken care. So one of his sons was killed, and even though we might not have the right chronology here, but John Brown ends up killing some slavers with a sword. I mean, just
He and his sons and 2 other guys, right after Lawrence, he shows up. It was Osawatomie, actually, and hacked these guys to death with sabers, which, yeah, you're like I say, you either like him or you don't. So
Right.
he's a big hero for doing that. If you're this guy,
right. Okay. So John Brown, as you said, decides the only way that slavery would end is through violence. So he concocts a plan to lead a slave revolt.
Yep.
And part of that plan is to go to Harper's Ferry.
have a shoot
Yeah, there you go, peanut butter mouth,
Yeah.
right? Go to Harper's Ferry, the big federal arsenal there, break into there, steal all the weapons out of there, and arm the slaves. He pitched this plan to Frederick Douglass, and Frederick Douglass said what?
That's the goofiest thing I've ever heard in my life.
Yeah, he was not. So John Brown, he tried to promote this amongst other abolitionists, and nobody took the bait, did they? They thought it was a terrible idea.
Well, it pretty much was, yeah. Actually, his first inclination, he had been planning this in the back of his mind for years, but he never had the wherewithal. Well, he picks up a dozen guys down in Kansas, and that becomes his little army. And they turned Tabor into a military camp.
Right.
So here's this basically kind of a Quakerish settlement with cannon and guys drilling all over the place, and that's where they went back and forth. They had a hospital because they'd bring the people up who got hurt. His first plan wasn't to go to Harper's Ferry. It was to take into Missouri, and he
Okay.
was going to take over Missouri. But he got cross-wired with a guy who was training his troops down in Tabor.
Mm-hmm.
So he figured this guy was going to rat him out. So he changed the plan. Then it became Harper's Ferry.
Okay. So some of the towns here in Iowa would have been Tabor. I think there's another town called Springdale.
Springdale, yeah.
Springdale. I think that's where he had a safe house and stored some of the weapons and munitions there also. I also want to bring up the fact that with all of this, you have the Underground Railroad going on. And of course, that ran across either down southern Iowa or up eastern Iowa or western Iowa, eastern Nebraska. There was kind of two different routes.
Mhm.
So down in southeast Iowa, then there was homes there on the Underground Railroad, and Kevin and I actually did a
West was Lewis.
Lewis,
Iowa, and the Hancock House, and we actually did a video there in Hancock.
There's a Jordan House in West Des Moines was a stop too. Of course, for a while, see, the Underground Railroad was just real popular. So anybody who had a basement with an old house went, oh yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
sure.
Well, they can only
Verify.
just so many of those. Yeah.
So yeah, a lot of people claim it, but maybe not.
It was real popular for a while.
Yeah, yeah. So anyway, he trains. He recruited some Iowans even to participate, I believe, in
Yeah.
his little army, his little militia.
He had 4 men with him, 2 Coppock brothers, and then 2 other guys. And I've got them written down, but if anybody cares, it's really most of those either get shot or hung. One of them escaped, Berkeley Coppock.
Okay.
It becomes a topic of conversation because he didn't actually participate in the raid, but they hunted him down. He escaped. They tried to extradite him from Iowa. The governor said no on a technicality. Meanwhile, he gets the guy up to Canada, and he ends up dying with an accident just before he goes into the Civil War.
And this gets right back to what you were saying before. You were either pro-Brown or anti-Brown. I mean, it was split down the middle as to whether he was a hero or a villain.
Yeah.
So anyway, so he decides he's going to execute his plan. He had, I believe, something like 10,000.
Well, now prior to that, there was one other thing that probably was I wouldn't say his crowning achievement, but he has a raid in 1857 and he brings back 12 slaves. Well, he's coming across Iowa. Well, everybody knows. I mean, it's making the papers. They're tracing him. But he's got sponsors, guys like Josiah Grinnell.
Okay.
So, I mean, he's got, and like the Hitchcock house that you mentioned. I mean, these guys, the general consensus was, okay, I'm not going to buck these pillars of society, okay? And okay, I don't agree with slavery, but you know how it goes. You don't steal my mule, I'm not going to steal your slave. So he brings these people up to Tabor. Well, now the guys in Tabor get pretty spooky about this because they can all be arrested. They've got marshals out. The governor of Missouri posts a $3,000 bounty on this guy's head.
Now, this is because of the Fugitive Slave Act.
Yeah.
And bounty hunters and or federal marshals could just go wherever within the whole nation.
Yep. To make a long story short, he gets them across and they end up in Canada. But he's got them on rail cars. Grinnell and the boys twist arms. Okay, so at first they're in wagons and this sort of thing. After that, he gets them on a rail car. They end up in Davenport. They end up in Canada. But he's got some fairly influential friends.
Right.
And a lot of money behind him. But Tabor gives it up. He goes east to talk to Douglas and try to raise money because he's broke. There's a depression going on in 1858. And he's broke, so he ends up in Springdale with these Quakers. Well, they're nice guys, but they aren't stupid. So they go, you don't have any money.
Well,
Okay.
and Quakers did not believe in violence whatsoever, no matter what the cause. So, yes, they supported him as far as abolitionist slavery because they didn't think any man should be a master over another. However, they were also just as much anti-violence. So he wasn't going to get, he gets tacit support, I guess is a way to say it.
That's a good way.
Yeah.
So he stays with a Maxon farm. And he said, all right, I'll house these 12 guys all winter long, and they can drill or do whatever they want. and then I'll hire them out to all the neighbors. But in the meantime, I'll also confiscate your mules and your wagon because I'm going to have to feed these guys and do this, that, and the other thing. Then finally they get the call, and then they end up in New York, as I recall, in order to attack Harper's Ferry.
Okay. So they, in a sense, successfully, well, I wouldn't say successfully attacked. They successfully breached Harper's Ferry, and they got inside, got to all the weapons. However, they get caged inside.
Yeah.
And there was a contingent of Marines. And who were these Marines led by?
Robert E. Lee was their colonel.
Now, Robert E. Lee, that name rings a bell.
Oh, you've heard of that guy?
I've heard of that guy, but I can't place him.
All right, well, he was kind of an obscure figure.
An obscure figure of the Confederacy.
Well,
No.
and
But no, he was a major, and it just shows how history interacts. You know, later on, of course, he becomes the commander of the Army of the Virginia. But
well,
he was
Stonewall Jackson was there too.
Stonewall Jackson was there too. So they get him penned inside. There is a battle. At one point, they ask Brown to surrender. He refuses to surrender, and he was either stabbed or shot, and his belt buckle saved him, or something like that.
I know he was. They nursed him back to health so they could kill him.
Yeah, right. So, long story short, his whole plan fell apart, and one of the reasons is all of these slaves that he thought was going to show up and rise up, why none of them materialized because they were too afraid to.
Absolutely.
And so his whole plan fell apart. They took him into custody, and then him and several others. There was a trial, and he was hanged.
Yep.
And so then there was poetry written about him. There was a song written called Old John Brown's Body, and that song is actually the chorus to that, or the melody to that, is actually the same as what famous Union song? My knives have seen the glory of the coming of the Lord. Do you know that song?
I do.
I'm surprised you don't know the name of it.
I was thinking of Beach Boys songs, tell you the truth, but ba 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 ba. Oh, that wasn't it though.
Wrong era.
All right,
Wrong
okay.
era. The Battle Hymn of the Republic.
Yep.
So, yep, she just changed the words to it. But
To Bob Brown.
no,
Oh,
to
all right,
Old
okay.
John Brown's Body.
Okay.
So, now there were some famous poets that wrote about him, and the point of his song is, even though he was dead, his spirit was living on. And in other words, the cause was going to continue. Even if you disagreed with his methods, the cause was just, the cause was right, and that cause will continue on.
Yeah. Yeah, he was preaching all over the state. He was, if you were an abolitionist, he was a celebrity. If you weren't, you just tried to avoid him because you didn't want to be anywhere near when somebody claps him in irons, I guess.
Absolutely, yeah. So, well, OJ, thank you so much for taking the time and sharing your knowledge with our viewers here. Would you like to say hello?
Hello.
Hello, Kevin.
Hello to all my fans out there.
That's right. We've got another video of OJ on the History Delights also. So, Kevin, thanks for all your technical know-how and setting us all up.
Hey, maybe OJ can do our ending.
Oh, would you like to tell our viewers, have a very delightful day?
Have a very delightful day.